Okay, very good. I think we're good. It looks like I'm getting the go-ahead from RIT. Welcome, everybody. This is the meeting of the Luzerne County Council Legislative Committee meeting. We are scheduled to begin here at 5 o'clock, and we're going to have a pledge of allegiance to the flag. So let me just enable the flag here. And here we go. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I want us to take a moment of silence. Hey, Ms. Lawrence, put a roll call, please.
Mr. Griffith?
Present.
Mr. Urban?
Here.
Mr. Haas?
Here.
All present.
Very good. We have a quorum. And any motion to adopt tonight's agenda, gentlemen?
I'll make that motion, Walter.
Second.
Second by Mr. Urban. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Very good. Well, everybody, I see we have quite a few participants tonight. It looks like about 15 members of the public and some county staff. So we're going to really adhere to the agenda here tonight. And this legislative committee is really an outcropping of the election inquiry committee that this council unanimously approved of in the wake of the election and the difficulties we had here in Luzerne County. So we were remanded 3 different topics, and you can see there on the agenda. I wanted to show it to you, but just for those folks at home who can't see it, when we finished the inquiry committee, there were some areas that we couldn't achieve consensus on, so it was remanded here to the legislative committee just for further investigation and discussion. And we have with us tonight Representative Seth Grove from York County. Thank you, sir. Welcome virtually to Wilkes-Barre, the snowy north up here. Hope you're in warmer climes down south. And we'll certainly hear from the representative later. Appreciate you taking the time. I know you're very busy. And so we look at tonight's agenda. Item 1 is just a summary of the inquiry. And I'm going to actually just share the page. It would be Chair Houck from our committee is going to be sharing this with the council tomorrow night. I'm sharing. I think that's the one. Yes. All right. So we have this, everybody, and again, I'm not stealing this thunder of the council, but we unanimously agreed upon this. The 4 members, myself, Councilwoman Steedman, Councilmember Urban, of course, Chairwoman Houck, and there's the summary there. And we've got just we talked about 4 different areas: the operating policies, procedures, and practices. And we just agreed to lump the findings together and then issue the recommendations down below here. And I know you all can read. I'm just going to have that there for a moment. And Representative Grove will indeed forward this on to your committee there in Harrisburg. I know I just watched the one that you had recently today, and from last night. So that was really enlightening. And the one also, the previous one, we saw the schedule there that you've got quite a few tasks there in front of you. So we as a committee want to bring forth the issues that our inquiry committee had, and just to do our part to make a better election here for everybody living in the Commonwealth. And we also had the Board of Elections and Voter Registration findings, and this is as much for the Representative Grove as for the other members of the public looking in here. And office management. I know not everybody's a speed reader, so forgive me for going very fast through that. And we had a lot of election procedures. I think the consensus was really that we had a lot of human error for many different reasons on election day. And we know the national debate about fraud and those claims, but here it was, again, a lot of different issues. And that was the majority of our recommendations here, which, listening to the SURE system and also what the Secretary of State said the week before, meaning some of this lines up with what was spoken in Harrisburg. And we're here tonight because here's where we're at down here, items for legislative review. And the agenda, I put them just a little out of order from what they are here, just because I thought it made more sense to talk about. So tonight, on the agenda that we have for our committee, that we're going to talk about just the general need for clarity. So letter C is actually tonight's letter A. It's our first item on the agenda. General need for clarity at the state level and statewide uniformity regarding election procedures. And letter B is the future of no excuse mail-in balloting, which is our committee's letter A. We'll talk about that in just a moment. And then tonight's letter C is the investigation regarding the CTCL funding group, which I didn't hear about that yet from Harrisburg. I'm sure that's on some people's radar as well. We couldn't achieve consensus on the future of mail-in voting and also the exact nuances and the different areas we should improve upon. But lastly, the CTCL group rather, it would be up here, that more investigation needs to be pursued. Forgive me as I'm scrolling through it, but it's in just up here. You probably read that in the earlier findings of that committee. So I'm going to stop sharing there for just a second, and we're going to come back here. So I just want to open the committee members for the first item in under section 1, letter A, the general need for clarity. Members, do you have any comments about that? Walter or Steve?
Go ahead, Walter. I mean, I'm just
Okay.
getting organized
Okay.
real quick.
All right. Well, just the general need for clarity at the state level is the ability for the state legislature and the changes that were made pretty much on the fly. And I'm sure Representative Grove has heard this as well. And the election law really, I mean, some of the sections that they were saying, like curing ballots, is something that, is kind of not in it's actually not in the legislation that you cannot cure ballots. So I think we need clarity on that from the legislature for elections, even though, I mean, the ability for the ballots to be not touched once, like a voter votes, when a voter votes their ballot, we shouldn't be able to tamper with that ballot in any way. That's just part of the statute, I believe. And for us to get a ballot that's not in a secrecy envelope and then call a voter and say that your ballot wasn't going to be counted because it's not in a secrecy envelope, so you need to go and vote, I think is kind of a stretch of the legislation. So we probably need clarity on that. I think one of the things that we ran into as a county council, as well as members who participate in the Board of Elections issues, is that I think the people who were doing the job were doing yeoman's work based on the fact that they pretty much got hit with 3 or 4 calamities all at once, between the COVID, the pandemic, the ability for us to scramble to get election polling places, lack of staff for polling places because of the COVID, and all of these things compounded into one big horrific mess for a person who doesn't, actually have the ability to do that as a lay person running an election. So those are kind of the things that we ran into. So we really need to tighten down the clarity of the legislation as much as we can. And I appreciate what the legislature is going to try and do, but we had a lot of problems with clarity, I think, in the issue of legislation. So I'll let Steve jump in here and see if he can have anything else he wants to add to it.
Sure, absolutely. So honestly, going back to what Walter was saying, no curing of ballots, definitely need clarity on that. In my opinion, too, like, we are a home rule county versus a county code county as Luzerne County. So our makeup of the Board of Elections is quite different than the standard 3 commissioner form of government. And so upon looking at the law, especially Title 25, Section, let me see here, Title 25, Section 1203, as far as the composition and the makeup of even like our registration commission. that part is where I'm really pulled out of the law and looked at it very closely. The Registration Commission is how people get registered to vote. In a normal county, the commissioners are part of that registration commission, or in a first-class city, which is Philadelphia, 3 of the city commissioners are part of that registration commission. Or in a home rule county, the 3rd section states that, if a charter allows us to choose who they are, those members are the registration commission. Or it could be the legislative body, meaning the council members of a home rule county. I think in my opinion, there needs to be greater clarity and even maybe a law change in that registration commission to be more of like a voter integrity commission of every county. Quite honestly, when I read the Pennsylvania election code, it doesn't actually say anything about the legality of having a quote unquote Bureau of Elections across all 67 counties, which I found quite interesting. Registration commission is how people apply to vote in essence. And, people have the right to challenge those applications. People have a right to accurate data. We really need to hone in on that and look at that a lot more closely. Maybe tie in PennDOT records, for instance, into the SURE system, tie in the last 4 digits of a social security number in from a Department of Revenue perspective in maybe the second iteration of SURE. You could achieve like voter ID from the back end, what we know about somebody from a state perspective before a voter registration card gets in the hands of an individual. We could do the legwork with today's technology. Something that I also saw, like the first time voter ID, for instance. If you go to a poll as a first time voter, you have to show your driver's license or some type of identification. Well, how do you do that with a mail-in ballot? Are you supposed to photocopy your driver's license and put it in an envelope for the first time? Questions like that, just to make sure that that person is who they say they are. Definitely needs to be a clear distinction between absentee and mail-in ballots. When I look at our own county, we have a permanent mailing list. There are people on that list that are asking for a ballot to be sent out of state. There's over 100 of those individuals, and they're asking for a ballot to be sent out of state on an annual basis. So they're actually predetermining that they're already going to be an absentee voter. But because it's quote unquote no excuse, we've got to mail it to them. But I was thinking outside of the box. If these individuals are by virtue of voting in Pennsylvania, you're claiming to be an actual citizen of the Commonwealth. Maybe we need to look at ensuring that those individuals who are out of state are paying their wage tax here in Pennsylvania or paying their local taxes here in Pennsylvania. Because by virtue of being a citizen, you are obligated to pay wage taxes here in Pennsylvania. So maybe that would sort of naturally clean up that database if we looked at not necessarily going after those people, but going after those people for their respectively for what's owed to the Commonwealth. What was very problematic in our county too is as far as electronic poll books and the data and the date that we actually dumped the data into the poll books or programmed the poll books. When we were doing our election inquiry, we found out that the poll book data was frozen on October 22nd. And what's problematic about that is that the last day to apply for a mail-in ballot or an absentee ballot was actually October 27th. So you've had 5 days worth of data that could have gotten skewed from the poll book at that point in time, allowing, the possibility of voting twice at a poll because that person may have not been flagged as requesting a mail-in ballot or an absentee ballot. Now, subsequently, the county did provide printed sheets, but then they were asking the poll workers to go into the poll book and change the data in the morning, which then can be problematic because you're allowing them to touch a live set of data If you can put a flag on for a voter, you can simply take one off. So if somebody got out of hand at the poll, demanded they wanted to vote on the machine, and pressured the judge to remove the flag, or pressured one of the inspectors to remove the flag, that could have happened, and potentially a person that, just really allow them to vote on the machine versus having that mail-in ballot. I mean, so you could have had a mail-in ballot get crossed in the mail, and we collect it as a county, open it up, and then count it once, and then they put their vote in the tabulator and get counted twice. There's a whole slew of issues that we've uncovered, and even myself, I've uncovered like 23 deceased individuals from October 6th through November 3rd. There were 23 people who passed away from when they got their ballot, and then actually subsequently they were able to mail it in, and it was able to slip by into the county's final tally. And those 23 individuals had their votes cast, even though they were deceased. Our Board of Elections did not pull them aside or set them aside, but did count them. So there has to be greater clarity on how we can, sort of take those ballots and put them aside initially, and then, and not count them in the final total. Obviously, we can't effectuate the entire election because of those individuals, but they should be cast aside as the law states. Let me see here. So I definitely, like I said, I really need to stress though, because Luzerne County is a home rule county, we need greater clarity on the rules of election process in a home rule county, because there's sometimes some differences between our Office of Law, maybe possibly the Pennsylvania Economy League, possibly DCED and Luzerne County Council, or some members on council, on our interpretation. Under Title 53 municipalities, it does state that elections and a charter cannot enlarge the powers of elections matters, and I'm just summarizing here, in the way we administer elections. But quite honestly, I think we need people that are more familiar with election process than what we have in Luzerne County, because our charter actually reconstituted our Board of Elections. We put 4 citizens on there, and between those 4 citizens, they're able to choose a 5th who was a chairperson, and they actually adjudicated the election process without even having a copy of the law until about January 21st. So they've done a lot of different things, write-in process too. That became problematic both in the primary and in the general election here in Luzerne County. Our Board of Elections chose to scatter some votes for some people, and in other cases counted them for others, which there has to be a consistent process. Although it's in the law, we didn't follow it, in my opinion, to the letter of the law on how we simply journalized write-in votes. It did cause a lawsuit in the county that did get adjudicated in favor of the county, but it's still problematic, on its face. So quite honestly, there's a whole multitude of issues. I could forward those on to you, Representative Grove, and get them out to you. But I think quite honestly, we need to move some of the dates back as far as being able to process from a county level. At the moment, that's pretty much what, actually, the other last thing, I think, just to ensure that we have more open records access than we currently have, to be able to inspect envelopes, to be able to inspect anything that is public record within the Bureau of Elections in the counties. So some of us can actually investigate some of these claims.
Mr. Chair, if I could jump in on a couple items there before you jump in.
Go ahead, Walter.
Okay, thank you. A couple of items, and I'll be real brief because I know Harry has some issues, and I want to hear from the representative as well. But write-in votes was one of the things that we really had problems with in the primary as well as the general, was clarity in the, either in the statute or clarity on the ability for the counties to understand what is the process for counting write-in votes, and what do we classify as a write-in vote that gets scattered and what ones don't. How do we list that in the return process and the certification process for the board? Not really clear on that. I don't believe in the statute, certainly, but we did have some issues with that. That was one of the concerns that we had, was write-in votes mostly. In fact, there was a lawsuit filed against the county for that very reason, but I believe it was dismissed, and we didn't have any issues with it. But we need clarity on that. We also need some clarity on the drop box issue. There were some questions about putting boxes around for people to drop their mail-in ballots in, and we decided, I think the county decided it as a rule that they would just be able to drop them off at Penn Place only. And I think that's the accurate and correct way to do it. But I think we need clarity on that as well, because as you know, Luzerne County is a third-class county, covers a lot of square footage, a lot of square miles. And we really need to have clarity so we know if we can put a drop box in Hazleton, southern Luzerne County, as well as northern Luzerne County, for those folks who obviously cannot drive into Penn Place. We had some issues with the ability to vote at the Penn Place building, which was another issue that we had, that the Act 77, I think, and Act 12 was not really clear on that process. In fact, I spoke to Representative Coffer about it, was the ability for people to come into the Bureau of Elections office and vote by mail-in ballot before the election. We thought that it was not appropriate to not have poll watchers there. Obviously, because of the situation, people were lined up outside the doors waiting to vote. They thought they were actually early voting in Pennsylvania. And I mean, the secretary said it was quote unquote early voting, but it really wasn't, because we're not counting the vote. So we had some problems with that as well. That needs to be addressed, I believe, with the state legislature. That early voting issue got to be very problematic. And I understand it's a presidential election, and that was, turnout was incredibly high, where you probably won't have that in other elections. But that being said, I still think it's something that needs clarity. So I'll let the chairman speak on the rest of the issues. I think we hit most of them at Steve Urban and myself. So I'll turn it over to the chairman now.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Councilman Urban, you said you had a couple more things to say.
Yeah, a couple other things too with the installation of newer machines too. Like in the past, zero tapes were issued early in the morning, and they were publicly posted at each ward and precinct. And then at night, there was a report that used to be run. I don't know what that process is at the moment, even though I think the law states that public posting of results should occur when the polls close. And then the complaint process too was another issue that I had run into back in the primary. I utilized the Department of State's website to file a complaint. And actually, for me, it was very difficult to even get to the complaint page, because I had to put in my voter registration name and address perfectly in order to proceed to the complaint page. And once I submitted the complaint, it went nowhere within my county, and it went nowhere within the DA's world. So, we maybe need to put a law in place that adjudication of complaints needs to be acted upon within so many days by someone, because they sort of just went to nowhere. The other thing is if you contact the FBI and file a complaint, they actually give out the Bureau of Professional Licensures phone number here in the Commonwealth, which is the wrong place to file an election complaint. And the other phone number they give you is back to the Department of State, and the Department of State will tell you, we're just the administrative arm, we're not the enforcement arm. So, you go nowhere even with them if you were to speak with them. The other thing is, and I'm going to bounce to another topic, would be like, sure, training and access should be mandatory for anybody that touches that system before they actually touch it, and then make it a crime if they share out their password. So it disallows temporary help or anybody to possibly use somebody else's credentials in that system. And I just going off of. And lastly, chain of custody of ballots itself. Anybody that touches a ballot should be sworn in under oath, and it should be documented that they're sworn in. So that way we know who's actually touching any of those mail-in ballots or absentee ballots. And one more thing, it was a crime at one point in time. It was a misdemeanor in Act 77 if an individual assisted another individual to actually fill out a mail-in ballot application or a ballot application. It was actually decriminalized in Act 12, I'm sorry. In Act 77, it was criminalized, and in Act 12, they took the provision out. So that opened up the floodgates for third-party individuals or anybody to go out and purchase the actual voter history database and then pre-print like mail-in ballot applications, and then allow individuals just to simply sign them, date them, and put their ID on them, which then opened up additional, like I said, the floodgates to really crush the county as far as getting additional mail-in ballots at the county level. So, creating additional work for everybody because of that process. Quite honestly, I think there should be some responsibility on the voters' behalf to fill out their own ballot application in totality versus having some outside group or agency help you fill it out. And that's it.
Very good. Thank you, Steve. Councilman Griffith, anything else on this issue?
No, I'm fine. Mr.
Still need
Chairman.
for clarity. And again, if you really look at the issues that the inquiry committee really uncovered and investigated, and then the findings, I think that one is we're just communicating this piece to the legislature down in Harrisburg. That's the whole nature of this committee, is to take what we do here in Luzerne County, as well as advocate what we think Harrisburg needs to do to help us run county government better. And I'm always fond of saying we're a home rule council, but commissioners are commissioned to do the work of the state. And we're just asking the state to come alongside us, offer more guidance where appropriate, give more direction, and help us finance things if they indeed do mandate certain things to happen. And unfortunately, in my time on this council, I've seen the governor mandate an awful lot of things that we just can't afford, and it's very difficult to get some of these tasks done. To do this in the most colossal election we've ever seen, to get brand new voting machines, to follow this new directive of mail-in balloting, and then obviously with the pandemic hitting, it was a perfect storm for some not an optimal, I'll try to be as polite as possible, not an optimal election here in Luzerne County. We had a relatively new director that we talked about with a lot of the election inquiry that was overwhelmed in many cases. And a lot of that was from her own words, that it was very difficult to do anything except for this mail-in balloting. And when we look at this, the next item here is the future of no excuse mail-in ballot in Pennsylvania. This is the contentious issue because I'm only one member of council. I'm just the chair of the legislative committee. I want to be very clear. This is a committee that is working to discuss and find out options. And that's why the inquiry committee remanded this to us. I know in the paper, we had at least one citizen say this was a political stunt, not necessarily her words, but it was a politicized committee. This committee existed long before that this thing was remanded to us. The chair put myself, Councilman Griffith, Councilman Urban on this committee. And we're here to really just hash out some of these issues. And I really appreciated the inquiry committee. I thought we did a tremendous job. I thought it was really well run. And I think we made a lot of headway and we covered a lot of stuff. But I think really when we look down here, where the rubber meets the road, is that mail-in balloting was the cause of a whole host of issues that I saw with, I think, compound issues. I watched your hearing, Senate Representative Grove, about the shore system. I think it compounded issues that the shore system was already dealing with. I think it, again, my opinion only as a member of the legislative committee, I think it solved a problem that we didn't have. Pennsylvania, according to the Constitution, offers absentee voting, and that could have been a remedy for even this COVID. But to go again in a colossal election year with mail-in balloting, I just think the timing was wholly inappropriate. And CCAP the County Commissioner Association of Pennsylvania had brought this up when the governor wanted us to get brand new voting machines. And this has been an issue for years now. And I sit on the Elections Reform Committee. I'm going to share with you what their findings were. It was issued, everybody got one in their inbox January 15th. But this mail-in ballot, it's going to continue to cause problems. And I get it. It's rolled out this first year. I'm big into giving grace where grace is due. I get it's not going to be perfect early on, but we found it looks like through, especially what Councilman Urban talked about there, it looks like the deceased people voted in Luzerne County. Again, I think that needs to be further investigated. It's an issue with the shore system as well, which I learned through listening to the hearings. It's going to be moot because evidently the state will be moving towards a new system. I appreciate the history that I think Deputy Secretary Marks was talking about, that the shore system was the first time that all the county's election data was codified in one place, that was brought to under one roof, that it was said that some counties were still doing it on paper, 20 years ago when this first came to be. So the purpose of this committee is not to throw fiery darts at staff who are working very tirelessly, both the county and the state. I totally acknowledge that. But when we look at no excuse mail-in balloting, I'm just scratching my head. It just opens it up to people dropping the ball. It opens it up to fraud. Again, staying clear of that hot potato saying that fraud was committed. I'm not saying that, but I think through some lack of oversight, it opens it up to confusion. We saw that people all across the Commonwealth. I think it also caused our staff tremendous difficulty in getting it done. It was said too by one of the commissioners that across the state, out of 67 counties, 20 plus elections directors stepped down in the wake of this new machine mandate and then subsequently this mail-in balloting process. I see here on the agenda too for the state inquiry is going to hear from other states. I'm looking down here. It looks like April 15th, Representative Grove. They're going to hear from how other states conduct elections. And I really wanted to have this projected here on the screen. I wasn't able to do that, but I was wondering that perhaps if you'd be willing, I would recommend that Councilman Urban be open and available to speak with your committee on Zoom for any of these meetings, whatever might be a good fit. He's the researcher out of the three, and I appreciate what he's found with some of these other issues. And again, I think a couple were at least addressed at the last meeting about the shore system, because we know that's now going to change. That being said, I would even recommend that the legislature rescind what they agreed upon in October 2019. I don't think the governor would move in that direction, but I would like to see us go back to the old system. It was used for years that there was some kind of voter suppression going on. Well, now we have voter oppression. Some people were not able to cast their ballots, it looked like. We got dozens and dozens of reports here in Luzerne County, and it's unfair. So we are looking for clarity. I think everybody on council wants to see a fair election, but again, not at the expense of convenience. I really don't understand that we're so focused with convenience at the ballot box. Democracy, a Republican democracy is not convenient. It takes people paying attention. It takes people doing their homework, looking at the candidates. With mail-in balloting, now it's reduced the person having to get off the couch and go to the polling place to vote. It's reduced it now to who can get the numbers game out. I heard in the hearing that there were dozens of groups and that were mailing out ballot applications. So they're flooding people. It comes down, in my opinion, to what other candidate and or campaign has the most money to mobilize to snatch the mail-in balloting, and then the election's over. So we have, it's been said before, we have election month or we have election months, not election day. And I'm very skeptical. I'm representing the people in Luzerne County, dozens and dozens who've contacted me. I know you've all heard of folks like this. Again, to be very clear, this is not to support one candidate. This is not, my opinion isn't here to get some kind of advantage. I just see it's really rife with fraud. Members of this committee and Representative Grove and all the attendees here today, I think we can do a lot better. And just because some other states have done it, I also think with severe complications in many cases, I don't think Pennsylvania needs to lead from behind, just follow what everybody else does. So members, any comments about the mail-in balloting?
Harriet Sheila, am I allowed to talk?
I think I would love to, Sheila, but I think to be fair to everybody, if we could hold to the end, I'm sorry, but and I want to totally give everybody time.
Great.
Harry, if I could talk just briefly on the mail-in ballot.
Sure.
One of the things that I've noticed that I see some legislation coming down, and I think it's a bill that's in the process for mail-in ballots, is the discussion about having the secrecy envelope not being required in mail-in ballots, which I think is a very large mistake on the legislature's part, and certainly would hope that they would not support that. I think that the secrecy envelope is what protects everyone's ballot from anyone seeing it on the mail-in side or the absentee side. And I do see some legislation out there, whether it's in the committee form or whether it's a bill going through the House currently, that is now going to try and get them to put mail-in ballots through without a secrecy envelope. I think that's.
Walter, I don't want to cut you off there, but if you look at agenda item number 2, there's a couple legislation pieces that I want to share with everybody, and I can project those to everybody.
Oh, okay.
One of those is that issue.
Yep.
So if
And
you-
I thought that was
save
on
that.
the article today. So, okay, very good. I'll wait till we get there. Thank you.
Absolutely. Councilman Urban, yourself. Any comments?
I think we've actually said enough at this point in time. I mean, I just have to reiterate that, I believe in election day and not election season. And there is a clear distinction between, like I said, mail-in ballots and absentee ballots. I don't think mail-in ballots were designed initially, or the thought processes was to mail out like people that are on the permanent list out of state, on an annual basis, and even out of county. I mean, there's a bunch of people that are asking us to send ballots to even outside of this county, to like Tunkhannock, to Bethlehem, to Philadelphia. You're talking year after year, election after election. And then when it comes down to a local race, I mean, you could lose by 1 or 2 votes. Somebody that's not living in this county at their house or voting from their house, I mean, could potentially impact somebody's local race, just by 1 or 2 votes. If you're talking like an auditor race or a local mayor race, having somebody vote from Tunkhannock or Bethlehem or Philadelphia on an annual basis to impact like a Bear Creek Village, election. That could potentially happen, if there's not consistency and clarity on mail-in versus absentee. Obviously the state constitution covers the absentee process. That says the legislative branch of government shall have a process. There's a process in place. I just don't agree with like sending mail-in ballots outside of the county and really outside of the person's own election ward. I think the intent was probably just to design it so they didn't have to go to the poll and be able to get the ballot from their home. But because it's just clearly a no excuse situation, it could be sent anywhere around the country. And based on my own research, I've seen, ballots being sent to San Francisco, to New York, Connecticut. And if you start looking at people where they live, you go look at their LinkedIn profiles, you look at their Facebook pages, they're not living in Pennsylvania. They're living somewhere else based on what they're stating. They may even have a job in the city or in San Francisco, So once again, like I said, are they actually paying their wage taxes here in Pennsylvania, or are they just impacting our election process?
Mr. Chairman, again.
Go ahead, Councilman Griffith.
Yeah, it's the other thing that I wanted to address on the mail-in ballots, Mr. Chairman, to the representative is, I think it's a violation of a Pennsylvania state constitution in Article 7 of 14 that deals with absentee voting in our constitution, Pennsylvania Constitution. It doesn't state anywhere in there about mail-in voting. It does specifically in our constitution allow for absentee voting. So I think if we're going to continue with mail-in voting or mail-in balloting, I think it would be wise for the county or for the state legislature to put that question on the ballot as far as changing the Pennsylvania Constitution, much like we're going to do right now with the issue that's up. There's a question up this in this primary. So I think it's a violation of the state constitution, Article 7, Section 14, and the ability for the secrecy envelopes for the mail-in ballots is a violation of Section 7, Article 4 of, or Article 4, 7, Section 4. I'm sorry, that deals with secrecy in voting. The Constitution is clear that says that if you vote in the state of Pennsylvania, your vote has to be kept secret. So if we do away with the secrecy envelope, then we're going to be violating the Constitution in that area as well. So those two areas of the Constitution, I think, are critical to our mail-in voting process that the legislature needs to look at.
Very good. Thank you, sir. So again, I know it's a contentious issue. It's people are very passionate about that. So we'll certainly hear from public comment. I see a couple comments here. I'll be happy to let you all speak in just a little bit. Third item there under agenda item 1 is the investigation regarding the CTCL funding, and that stands for the Center for Tech and Civic Life. And that issue, it was found that Luzerne County received $200,000+ from this group, which was under the guise of helping the mission statement talks about basically helping better elections, better secure elections across the country. Well, if you do a cursory investigation of this, there's a lot of very extremely liberal groups that are funding this CTCL. And we took a look at this. One was the Rockefeller Foundation, Facebook. Obviously, we have some big tech companies that have, in fact, stepped on free speech in recent months. And here they are, they're involved in funding public elections. I know a few years ago, quite a few years ago at this point, when we were talking about Moon Lake and how we could best keep that under county leadership and bring that back, I suggested, let's have some private funding. Well, that was poo-pooed by a lot of people, said you can't do that. It wasn't allowed in the state law. Well, here we are with this outside group that does very liberal things, and here they are involving elections, not just here in Luzerne County, but all across the country. The committee talked about who was in charge of applying for that grant and then executing that grant, and we still haven't had some finality on that. So the Election Inquiry Committee said we need to investigate more in this matter, and I think this one might be one, Representative Grove, with all due respect, to pass down to the legislature in Harrisburg that has the resources and the time, or maybe the Attorney General, to really investigate what was this really funded for, because we couldn't find that out as an inquiry committee in our own backyard. And that's been a real concern with a lot of people, not just in Luzerne County, but across the country. Councilman Griffith Walter, for Steve, questions or comments about that one?
I have nothing further on that one.
I don't either, other than I think it's an internal thing for the county to take a look at. I mean, if it's, just to make sure that we receive the funding and, what the purpose of the funding was. I know we did get some reports from Budget and Finance, and we probably could get some more information on that, but I think it's something that the state certainly needs to be aware of for sure.
Very good. And again, we just wanted to bring that up and mention that briefly. The second agenda item is current legislation. And what I'm going to do, everybody, is just project just a few that, with much thanks to citizen Mark Rabo, we know he's the guy's eye on the state all the time and has a lot of legislation in mind. He shared some things with me, and I'm going to share the screen, and forgive me because I've never used this computer before. I want to share the screen. Stand by, everybody. Just give me 1 second here. It is here. Good. Okay. All right. Sharing. Karen is sharing. So on here, if I can slide this over to. I'm really good with tech. I really remember, but I'm honest. I just can't move this over to the screen. Hold on for 1 second. Okay. Here we go. This one is from the United States Congress. Actually, it's House Resolution 102. And essentially, we're looking at, you can see the short of it all, to ensure election integrity by establish consistent standards for procedures for voter registration across the entire country for federal offices. So again, this would only impact those races that would go to Washington. And it seems like it's a pretty straightforward bill. I think it's something that we should consider doing. It's been introduced first in this session of Congress. And again, I Walter and Steve, I sent it to you just a short time ago. So I don't expect you to be well versed in saying, yay, that's a good thing to take a look at or not. But I think it's something that we can consider about that one. The next one is House Bill. This is a Pennsylvania bill. This is House Bill 18. And this one is provides for designation of Election Day as a legal holiday. And again, I with the mail-in ballot, I don't just want to blow up mail-in ballot. I was being very clear about this. And I really think to make it easier for people, a big issue was, well, hey, I work, it's extremely inconvenient. Well, if we have a holiday for that, I think that might be able to circumvent that issue when people complain about that. I know I lived in Virginia for 2 years and they had Election Day off. They actually used the public schools as polling places. So you didn't have, it saved the election bureaus, election offices a lot of time about trying to procure polling places like we have here. And with the COVID, when we know we had to consolidate this last year, that would kind of eliminate that problem to have at the public schools. So again, an issue. And Walter and Steve, if you want to chime in, I'm all ears about something like that.
What act are you looking at, Harry? I'm sorry, our House bill?
House Bill 18 here, and it's I'm sharing it on the screen if you can see that. And forgive me, folks at home, we're just calling in. Again, it basically allows Election Day, it allows that to be designated as a holiday.
Well, I think it would be beneficial for folks to be able to come out and vote on a holiday for sure. It would take the burden away of going to work in the morning and have to figure out how you're going to get there to vote. But I think the financial impact to employers and other people that pay holidays could be a little bit of a stumbling block on that particular issue. Then are we not paying people as a legal holiday to go and vote? Then we might have some kind of leverage as an employer to possibly coerce them into voting because we're paying them for the day off. That type of mindset may creep in. Not saying that it would, but I think we can give everybody the opportunity to vote if we do it properly. I think absentee ballots work. I think mail-in ballots can work if we do it properly and put enough restraint on it. And I think that there's more than enough opportunities for people to vote without making it a holiday. I would certainly hope that the legislature would do a lot of research to find out what that costs the private sector to do that.
Steve, any comments, thoughts on that?
I would actually concur with Councilmember Griffith on that. The private sector would be mostly impacted on this particular issue, even schools and whatnot. So I think the law already provides the ability to go and vote. You can't sort of be denied the right to vote. So, if you have to step away for an hour or two during the course of the day, I don't think you can be penalized, to go and vote, and maybe just strengthen that provision to allow just the small window of opportunity to go and vote versus the entire day.
And I would really be concerned about the fact that are we not paying people to actually vote then if we pay them for the day off? So I think that would be something that the legislature should take a look at, because I think, if you look back, I don't think the bars and things like that could be open, and they were all shut down for a reason, because they did not want that type of thing. Polling places were not allowed to give out any kind of favors to people who came in to vote. So I think that goes hand in hand with allowing an employer to pay you to take the day off to go vote.
Very good. All right, thank you, gentlemen. I mean, another issue, it's come up, we've talked about the Elections Reform Committee. It's just very hard to find poll workers nowadays. It's just very difficult. It's a full day, more than a full day. It's like a 14-hour shift, of course, and a lot of us have worked those days at the polls, either as an election official or as a candidate. So that would help kind of resolve that perhaps. But again, some food for thought. I'd still be willing to talk about it, but I appreciated the feedback. I just have two other specific bill here to talk about, and that would be this one, House Bill 143. And this one was to basically looked at the shore system, and it essentially makes sure that they purge deceased voters in a more timely fashion. And they tied this also that you can't apply for PACE or elderly benefits in Pennsylvania because the same thing is applied to that they're purged every month or so. So that kind of makes that more sure. But however, with what I just witnessed there with the hearings in Harrisburg just a few days ago, it looks like that's going to be changing. So I don't know if this bill might be moot or not, but I think we've seen that issue. I think Councilman Urban, you brought that up with perhaps people the deceased that voted here in Luzerne County. So that might address that. But comments about that, Walter and Steve?
I would say, looking at deceased voters, maybe even set up another portal, through the Department of State or going off of a county's website, where one could even copy and paste an obituary from a local newspaper and have it sent into a bureau of elections, or, the registration commission of each county, and let them decide on what to do with that particular person's ballot. I think that would open up, the additional check and balance in the system, where one can just simply take an obituary, screenshot it, take that screenshot and send it in, and then, make that process a little bit smoother. And then just circling back to poll workers, maybe open up the process so that county workers and government officials can actually, or, sort of non-contested government workers can actually become election officials on election day. I know that, currently there's restrictions on people that are in elected capacity and then that work for usually like the state or local governments from participating, or at least county government from participating in the election process. So I think, opening that process up and just removing those restrictions to allow more people to work that day. Obviously, you still need the checks and balances in place, but, poll workers are needed everywhere.
I don't have anything to add on that subject, Mr. Chair.
I apologize, Walter, forgive me. I should have asked that in advance. What I'm also showing here, this is the CCAP election reform preliminary report. And Representative Grove, I'm sure you're very familiar with this. Some of the members testified there in Harrisburg before. This is 7 pages long, and I'll post this as well. But council members, McDermott, I see you're on, and Seidman and Hauk, you all can see that. That was dated, I believe, the 15th of January this was issued. And it's a great committee because we just really want to make it work for Pennsylvania. We want common sense election issues. So for example, here, there's the issue of job boxes. So here's the background, and they give the policy considerations. Okay. And you're going to see a lot of these. The commonality is that the counties are just seeking further clarity, and not necessarily, last minute, last couple weeks before the election from the judiciary, but just from the legislature itself. If they could really legislate and be very clear so that the executive functions would be cut in stone, that there wouldn't be too much back and forth and question about where the authority stops and starts. But this is very common sense. Ballot signatures, they talked about that, but this deals with the secrecy envelope. Should naked ballots be counted? These are things, again, that we want to take a look at. Permanent voter, mail-in voter list caused a lot of problems. And this is where people are calling in. And again, going back to the hearing, a lot of human error, a lot of voters truly thought that they'd never requested a mail-in ballot. Even our committee found out, well, it turns out they did. They checked off that little block. So it was very confusing. So again, more clarity with that. Sure system issues. Again, if you want to do some pleasure viewing, check out the hearing in Harrisburg. Department of State guidance to counties. Okay, again, it's unclear what statutory basis they had and what was truly guidance or best practice. So again, it seemed like there was a little wiggle room there. Election staff retention. Again, that's what I said before. 20 counties, actually more than that, have at this point they've seen their staff leave in the wake of a lot of trauma here on election day. So again, what we can do to bring that back. And then Act 77. We just got to make sure that the county and state are working together. That's why I really appreciate the representative coming here today. But at the same time, why I did not why I didn't invite any of our local delegation. And I know a citizen shared that the Representative Carroll was working on this, and I saw the article, and then I looked. This is Mike Carroll. He's out of the 116th, and I appreciate this being on his radar. But if you look at the changes being offered by Representative Carroll, they're almost exactly out of the CCAP playbook. So it just looks like for the most part, a week later, he copied and pasted, changed up a couple dates. But these things are all things that are in that CCAP document. So, I really appreciate this. My hope is that everybody in Harrisburg can really exercise leadership. That's why I'm so appreciative of this hearing. I think it's just a chance that we can get the word out and to say there really were problems here in Luzerne County, and we read across the country, but working together, I think we can do it. Again, I would like to see mail-in balloting be discontinued and shore up some other areas, but I know that's going to be up for debate and discussion. Gentlemen, comments about any of those items?
Actually, I'm just going to go one step further too, like return to sender ballots, things that came back to the county. Honestly, maybe there needs to be some clarity too, that the county must cancel those out within a certain period of time as soon as receiving those back to the county, not sitting in a mailing tray somewhere locked up. Those ballots should be canceled immediately so that there's no chance that they can be sort of taken out of any Bureau of Election or any courthouse and then subsequently used and then sent back in.
Very good. Walter?
No, I don't have anything more to add to that, Harry. I think they covered it pretty well in the CCAP letter.
I think at this point then, unless there's no other comment from the committee members, we're on item 3, and that's our guest. So Representative Grove, we'd love to hear from you. Thanks again for coming out tonight. Let me stop sharing here.
Will do. Hey, greetings from York County. I'm at the JCC this evening, Jewish Community Center here in York. Both my boys are basketball practice tonight, so I'm doing what I love with what I love. Little dad duty, little election talk. Really appreciate your input. One of the big reasons to do the hearings is to get input from stakeholders like counties. I personally value your information more than any stakeholder group because counties actually administer the elections. If we get our state policy wrong, we have major problems at the county level. So your input tonight, I took copious notes, has been phenomenal. Greatly appreciate it. You guys are doing, I think, the right thing. Reviewing a new law, right? Several new laws last session, major election reforms. We have an election law from 1937, the base law, which is old and antiquated to begin with. So going back, reviewing what happened and how we do it better, it should be the role of government at every level. So what you're doing is great. It is phenomenal. You're providing tremendous feedback. I heard so much this evening about what more we need to do to help counties move forward with election laws. the design of our hearings is to do that, to do the deep dive. From what I've seen, it's not one area of the law that needs work. It's a multitude. So we're going to take apart the entire election process from voter registration to election day operations, piece by piece, learn as much as we can, get as much input from counties, the department, stakeholder groups as we possibly can to ensure that we have the best system moving forward. Because ideally, it's not the system that should put the winners and losers, but the system provide the process for the people to decide who wins the elections, which is, I think, fundamentally where the election system should be at. So hopefully people have enjoyed at least the first two hearings. I know Department of Guidance has been very difficult for counties. From what we've seen, my personal opinion, obviously, is we've had a department secretary that used small minutiae law and blew them out of proportion. For instance, your issue around drop boxes came from a provision around satellite offices for counties that went from that to drop boxes to early voting, none of which was provided for under law. And when it was brought up in courts, judges basically said no harm, no foul. We're going to allow that moving forward. So, you know, taking state law and manipulating it to add new provisions that weren't there is a problem. Obviously, Secretary Bookvar is not there anymore, but during the hearing on election guidance, we heard a lot of I thought around her guidance, not, you know, this is what the counties needed to support their facilities or their election process. So a lot of problems with guidance. And that goes back to, again, I think one of your crutch problems is standardization and clarity within the law, which we need to do a much better job. There's no reason some counties like Luzerne followed the law and during cure ballots, and other counties didn't follow the law and cure ballots. There's no reason for the Department of State to say you can cure ballots when you obviously couldn't. So we need greater standardization, but at the same time, flexibility. Not every county is the same. Philadelphia is an animal among itself. Forest County is very small operating. So we do need standardization, but we do need to provide you some flexibility to administer elections. But generally, as a Pennsylvania citizen, if you walk in a poll at Luzerne County, if you work at a poll in York County, you should have similar process set up. I think we need to do as much standardization as we can. I think other states have done a pretty good job of weighing flexibility for counties, as well as the ability for standardization across the board. As far as where we're heading policy-wise, there's going to be a lot of bills introduced on election reform. There's going to be tons, some great ideas, some really bad ideas, some okay ideas across the board. Our goal is to fact find at this point. We need to actually see the impact of all those new laws and really old law, and then make sure we do our due diligence and work with our stakeholders like the counties. Particularly your ideas, again, phenomenal. Really appreciate it. And build a better system moving forward. So that's really our goal. Where that leads us policy-wise, I'm excited to find out myself because I'm not inherent on any way or certain direction. I want the counties and what they've had to deal with dictate those decisions moving forward. So you're a key stakeholder, you're a key county. I think with the amount of work you've done on this legislative and your advisory, looking at actually how your elections operated, I think are key to helping make those better decisions moving forward. So again, I applaud everybody on this committee and the county for moving forward and actually addressing these concerns to, at the end of the day, help your citizens.
Well, thank you.
And I don't know if you have any specific questions or anything else.
Well, I guess Walter, Steve, any questions for Representative Grove?
If I could, real quick, Representative Grove, it's Walter Griffith. Could you tell me, do you know of any other counties in the Commonwealth that are doing the inquiry committee similar to what Luzerne did regarding our most recent election? Yeah, I think,
Right. As far as I'm aware, you're the only committee doing it, and I'm not familiar with any other county doing it. Can you hear me?
yes, we can hear you.
So
All
we're
right.
having a little bit of a lag.
Um,
Doing okay.
I think you're the only county to do. Okay. I think you're the only county that I'm aware of that has done the inquiry committee on your election to kind of look back and saw how things operated to improve the election system, not only for the county, but obviously help us at the state level make better decisions with what you've learned. I reached 67 counties, roughly at input. We've got some great in that letter and those questions. Same thing with Department of State. We followed up with pretty in-depth questions, some oversight questions to start our oversight process that we're now doing public hearings on. But as far as I'm aware, you're the only county doing the deep dive and doing your due diligence. So again, I definitely applaud your leadership on that.
Thank you very much. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Urban.
I mean, as we continue to move on, I mean, like continue to find additional issues, things that I know when I look back at some of the research too, we had over 71,000 applicants for mail-in ballots, about 55,000 people, I think, or so, around 53 maybe returned them. I mean, we did have about somewhere around probably 14,000 ballots that never came back to the county. But, there were some issues and I think, working forward, we can get over this hump and some of the other issues too, obviously we use a third party provider to actually process our ballots in the general election out of Ohio. And then from the SURE system perspective, the report was initially, when we first sent them out, it basically said we sent them out on 10/6, where in reality, the ballots were not sent out until 10/9. So the SURE system was actually 3 days behind 3 days, that difference where it caused additional confusion where people thought they were going to get their ballots sooner, but it did not occur. So I know that our Bureau was utilizing the Department of State to dump reports to the county and then subsequently send them over to the election processor. And from what I'm gathering too, the processing time was almost like every other day, which added to the time to get a ballot to a person. The law also states that a ballot should be processed within 48 hours, not 72, not 96. So, I mean, we want to follow the letter of the law as it is written currently, and we could not do that properly, based on the amount of work that we had to accomplish in Luzerne County in the general election using an outside processor. Then you couple that in with the postal service that just became a huge travesty. So I think most of our SURE tags were like the ones that I think the most widely used one was an actual cancel reprint one. We didn't cancel any ballots out here in Luzerne County because there were no signature on the actual ballot applications, but other counties did utilize that particular reason code. So I'm assuming that, all 71,000 individuals signed the actual ballot application here in this county. I just find that hard to believe, but that there were not like one or two mistakes out of 71,000 applicants. But, those are the things that we want to look at a little bit closer to in time. Just to make sure that we're dotting our I's, crossing our T's, and even dotting and crossing our J's here. So going from there, I know back in the primary, we had some issues where some individuals got the wrong ballot sent to them. There were also issues where, because of the pandemic, it caused such a shortage at the polls where ballots were sometimes given out, the wrong party ballots were given out to individuals. My own father had the wrong ballot sent to him, wrong party ballot, and he was an elected official one time. So he had to, get his issue resolved by going down to the county and actually, I'm sorry, he had to actually go and vote provisional because it screwed him up. And so my own ward, the poll book was broken that day on election day until about 10:30. I had to sign a street list in order to sign in. We have to look at a reconciliation process between manual processing and poll book data processing. There's so many more issues that we can bring to light, but I don't want to go on all night here, so I'll defer back to the chair.
Great, thank you, Councilman. And we want to be respectful of Representative Grove's time. We want to make sure you get back and invest in your kids, Representative. So thank you for coming out. We're going to have public comment here, and we'd love for you to stay on, but I mean, you can clearly mute your camera and keep maybe your eyes on the prize too as you go. I understand it's a big sacrifice, so thank you. And I just want to leave, I'm going to quote you, Representative, at the last meeting, you said, we're not here to relitigate, we're here to find solutions, and we're here to fix the problem. So on behalf of all Pennsylvanians, thanks for what you do. And that's what I really appreciate my colleagues here on the legislative committee, as well as the other members on the inquiry committee and council at large. So unless anything else, Representative Grove, you certainly hang on. If you want to address people's questions they have, that would be fine too. But I think we have quite a few people that are going to have comments here. So again, I just want to be respectful of your time on behalf of all of us.
Oh, dude, thanks. I'll stay in and listen, and if I have an answer, I'll chime in and help you out.
Very good. Very good. Thank you again, sir. And I think best practice here is we're going to move into the public comment period. And, we in Luzerne County, we do a 3-minute timer here. I want to make sure we're not here for a long time, but I want to make sure everybody is heard just like the representative heard us. So that's only fair and appropriate. And I think I'll turn it over to our fellow council members first, if that's okay. And Sheila, I think you chimed in here first. So you have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members and Representative Grove for visiting us. There are some concerns I have, having been on the election inquiry committee, and then having some issues regarding legislation that needs to be brought up. But my concerns differ a great deal from the concerns you heard tonight. My concerns are dealing with the fact that I like no excuse voting. I think we've gotten, according to my numbers, from the last this past presidential election and the one before, we had almost 20,000 more people vote. I think that's wonderful. And as we get used to mail-in balloting, no excuse mail-in balloting, and working out the kinks, I think that'll only increase. I think going backwards in time is very, very, very bad. I also want to say, Harry, that Virginia has, at this point, no excuse voting. So I know you mentioned Virginia, but they too have changed. So as many other states. Personally, the issue regarding drop boxes, I think there should be drop boxes. My brother lives in Colorado, has never voted at a booth. It's only been a drop box. They've never gotten any other kind of ballot. And for the people that are in the northern part of this county, as well as the southern part of this county, because this county is so big, I think they need it. Coming to Penn Place is really an inconvenience. Anyway, that's about it for me. Oh, CTCL. I don't think there's anything wrong with a group that has liberal individuals backing it, giving $250,000 to dozens and dozens of counties. When I do believe there are also groups that are more conservative that for many, many years have given money. So I think it's just another thing that happens in politics. And we shouldn't shut any money down that is given for grants. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilwoman Seidman. Councilwoman Houck, are you still here?
I am still here. Thank you for calling on me.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it. And I'm very happy that you called this meeting together so soon after our elections inquiry turned over a couple of these topics. And I'm very glad to see that Representative Grove joined us. The only thing I would like to say is that the reason we turned some of these issues over to the legislative committee is not so much that we couldn't achieve consensus. It's that we didn't try to achieve consensus because we didn't feel they were issues for the inquiry. And so our inquiry committee looked at not just the election, although we certainly heard a lot about that, but we looked at our entire bureau operation, our entire board operation, and how we run elections in Luzerne County in any year, not just in 2020. But of course, there were significant things there. And the critical piece I think that needs to come out of this, the legislative effort, is the unification of procedures across the state, because we do need, and not just Luzerne County, but every county needs to be doing things consistently. Curing of ballots, and the big piece, so as not to burden our bureaus of election, is to allow them to open and start processing the ballots before the polls close. If they had been able to start, say, at 7 o'clock that morning, just to open and process them, probably most of the ballots could have been completed by that evening, and then allowing for the receipt of military ballots and other ballots that might have come in later. It certainly would not have been such a long, drawn out process. Pennsylvania was one of the states that was really holding up a lot of decisions about the election, and it was primarily because of that delay. And that is something that has to be done at the state level. That has to be set in motion by the legislature. But just in general, any kind of controls on the system, I think that there are some things that need to be defined in the law. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what the state legislature will come up with in terms of that. But I think they need to be things that apply across the state. Okay. And I will just say, I voted by mail very happily. With the pandemic, I was very happy not to have to go wait in line. So if you want to say that we didn't reach consensus, you could say that. I just think that we voted different ways and for different reasons. But I was very happy to see so many people turn out to vote, or so many people turn the vote out. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Well said as always. I see Councilwoman McDermott, do you have anything to say?
No, not at this time. I'm
Okay.
just listening in, but thank you.
Sure, just check in there. All right, I want to turn over to the attendees here, and forgive me, I got some chats, I got some attendees. I think, how about, I know Mrs. Williams, you sent council an email, so let's go with you first, with all due fairness to you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Welcome.
Well, first, can you hear me?
Yes, indeed.
I sent an email and I did express concern about this committee being consisting of 3 Republicans and no Democrats on the committee, which kind of, affects its credibility, if you ask me. The other thing that I want to bring up is that you've asked Representative Grove to be here. I understand that he's in the lead acting chair of the House State Government Committee, and they're having hearings. But his committee is a very partisan group too, because it's a GOP majority committee. And I want to make you aware, and I'm sure Representative Grove is aware of the Pennsylvania Election Law Advisory Board, which he voted to create last year, which was set up to address the 2020 election. And it was set up in a very bipartisan makeup, including members of the State Department, Senate, House leaders, advocacy groups, and county election administrators. And it appears what his committee is doing is, in a way, might have appearances of usurping what their role is, because this is what they created this group to do, to study this past election with a more bipartisan group. Personally, I think it was wrong, and it might be a little wrong, and I might have suggested doing this as a panel discussion with him, and also a member or two of that Pennsylvania Election Law Advisory Board. That would have included the county manager, some members of the election board, people who were players in this, the director of the Bureau of Elections and the deputy director, even though I know they've resigned, but there is an acting one right now. So I would have liked to have seen that made this meeting maybe handled with a little bit more, few more of the players. Also, being that Mr. Haas, Urban, and Griffith have all said they have negative positions on the new no excuse mail-in ballot law that was overwhelmingly utilized by Luzerne County citizens, more than 70,000. I would like to remind everyone that the Act 77 that the GOP majority put through in 2019, well before the election, only 2 House Republicans voted against it, and all Pennsylvania Republican senators voted for it. And why they really wanted it. And the reason they really wanted it was because of the other part, that it eliminated straight ticket party voting. So what happened was they didn't know the pandemic was coming. It came, and everybody wanted to do no excuse mail-in ballots. And they thought, oh my goodness. And it was overwhelmingly popular. So now these talks of rescinding, like Councilman Haas is talking about, I think what would happen is it would be very, very unpopular, and the citizens of Pennsylvania would not be very happy if they try to do this. Lastly, I would like to hear some discussion by the committee members and Representative Grove with regards to the results of the recently released Pennsylvania risk limiting audit pilot of the November 2020 presidential election. Luzerne County participated in this audit along with 63 of the 67 counties that participated, 63 out of 67. And this audit found strong evidence of an accurate account. Now, Councilman Urban has repeatedly challenged the Luzerne County election results and has also repeatedly requested an audit of our county's results. And I would like to know if this report this release has put his concerns to rest. And I'd also like to know what Mr. Haas and Griffith and Representative Grove's responses to this audit result is. Thank you.
Councilman Irwin, would you like to respond briefly to that, please?
Quite honestly, I honestly don't think, like, I know our numbers are skewed. I mean, I have an example that 2,820 provisional ballots were actually counted in our county election. But from what I was told, that there was 1,810 shown in the SURE system, which is a difference of about 1,110 ballot difference over the amount so we actually counted more votes than what was reported in the SURE system. Ultimately, I have a source that basically stated to me that we are over about almost 3,600 votes compared to what was reported. So no, I mean, quite honestly, the issue to me is still outstanding. I'd like to deep dive into our figures a little bit more deeper. I'm not one of these conspiracy theorists that's looking at the machine results. I mean, if we wanted to put the Donald Trump issue to bed, we could have just simply taken 5,000 paper ballots that had Donald Trump's name on it and people that voted for him and run them through the Dominion system. And if it came out to 5,000 to 0, we could have just simply put that issue to bed. We're not looking at this in a partisan light, as the member of the public has stated. We're looking at this in totality, that the results don't appear to be right. And we'd like to make sure that there's one person, one vote, and making sure that we simply just count the election numbers accurately, consistently, and it's one person, one vote, not one person, two votes, or multiples. I mean, I sent a video in of a member of the public back in November, where this individual is showing how to sort of game the system, drop a ballot in the drop box and then subsequently go vote provisional at the poll and hoping to sneak a second vote by, but nothing ever became of that video, nor the clips and the screenshots that I've taken and sent in as evidence. It's all there, but nobody in law enforcement has looked at that as well. So, I mean, I've passed it on. I just sent it on to Representative Grove for his input and sent it on to a state senator earlier today. So, these are things that need to be addressed. These are serious concerns. People don't say that there's voter fraud, but we're looking at it from all angles, very objectively, and this isn't with partisan eyes. I mean, obviously Donald Trump won this county. We could have said, the heck with it, it's over and done with. I mean, but we actually looking at this in an honest manner to make sure that we're doing everything above board within the confines of the current law and current laws, and looking at this with, like I said, an open mind.
Councilman Griffith, would you like to respond?
Yeah, I'll be real brief because I know we want to have a lot of callers and I don't want to prolong it, but the generalization that I'm against mail-in ballots is highly unfair. I'm not against mail-in ballots and I'm not against absentee at all. I'm about a fair and secure process. I don't believe that some of the things that happened with mail-in ballots was done securely. I think there was some questions about some issues with mail-in ballots that I need addressed. Quite honestly, I have no problem with mail-in ballots. I have no problem with absentee ballots. I do have a problem with the process because, if we allow mail-in ballots to come in after the poll books are already sent out, that's a problem because now you don't have the ability to verify a voter. So just to be clear, the generalization that I'm against mail-in ballots is not accurate at all. And it's about a fair and honest election. And that's basically all I'm about. It's not a partisan issue for me, Republican or I would have had no problem with Representative Carroll on this call or Mr. Pashinsky or any Democrat at all. I mean, it's not partisan for me. It's just about good government. And I think that if we all strive for good government and take away the ability to use a partisan whip against each other, I think we'll go a long way in this county. And I think that's what's key in not only in this county, but in the federal government and the state government. Let's take away the politics and let's just do what's right for the people. And I think we'll be a lot better off.
Thank you, Councilman. And, I'm glad you spoke up about that because the next steps for this committee with the specific election issues, I'm envisioning the Senate's also going to hold a hearing. And when that takes off, I would welcome whoever the chairman of that operation is as well. And I would also love to hear from the Department of State's office as well. I'm also envisioning any of our local officials like we've done in years past. Once we get our hands around where we want to go with the county, then call them in, Republicans and Democrats, have them, let's see if they'd be willing to come out. That hasn't always happened, but Representative Carroll has come out more than others. So I do appreciate that with him. But at the same time, we're looking at them to really be lions for us, to advocate for us. And we just haven't always seen that with county government. And that's just a fact. That's what I've seen. I feel very strongly about that we're the whipping boy. And when the state needs to save some money, rolls on down to the county. So I do have a problem with mail-in balloting. I think it causes a lot of unnecessary problems, hassles. I think it does open to a lot of inappropriate voting. Again, not fraud. I'm not saying fraud, but there's been a lot of drop balls. And we see this in other states too. Lastly, we haven't even looked at the cost of this yet. It looks like we're going to pay for it with a lot of CARES money, but going forward, it's going to cost more money. And again, solve the problem we don't have. We already have absentee ballots. Lastly, Ms. Williams, we just want, like Councilman Urban said, we want it to be as fraud-free as possible, and we want to restore the trust that half the country out there has. Half the country thinks the president is illegitimate. That's a problem. And you can point fingers and things like that, but we want to get to the bottom of this. We want to make sure that every stone is unturned, and it's not a witch hunt. You can see today's meeting was very appropriate. And lastly, if you look at not all change is necessarily good. Just because the overwhelming majority of the legislature voted for this, maybe it was short-sighted. Maybe they need to reconsider their votes. I know, Ms. Williams, you're big into the anti-gerrymandering campaign. Well, when the districts were drawn in 2011, that was done in a bipartisan manner. Yet you had issue with that. I have issue with the mail-in balloting. So these are all very legitimate, and I appreciate everybody coming out tonight. We are going to continue on with some other comments here. I think it looks like Owen L. Sir, ma'am, it's your floor if you'd like to speak.
Thank you. Just two comments, and I'm afraid they more or less parallel the email that I did. I understand. I also did the mail-in voting. And the primary reason, of course, was the pandemic. I mean, that's, to me, that's my understanding of why this was rushed through in the way it was. And I thank God that it was. I also had occasion to go up to the polling place in Union Township on election day and saw the long lines of people waiting there. Of course, it's a presidential election, and you expect that. But I think that your primary concern, Mr. Haas, is oversight of the mail-in. That seemed to be your primary, your primary fear or concern over the mail-in. And it seems to me that it's legitimate to see that this innovation proceeds with the proper oversight. I agree with you there. It should be overseen. But the fact that so many more people voted, so many more citizens voted and expressed their choice. And I've always found it fascinating when, okay, they decided on the president, but decided on a different party for their representative. I mean, that, to me, that is democracy. And the fact that it was done with all this mail-in ballots is a plus as far as I'm concerned. The other thing, Mr. Griffith indicated he had a fear of employers influencing a vote if election day were considered a holiday. I had the privilege of going to India recently, and fascinating, try to get out of your bubble thing. And the day we arrived, the person who met us said, listen, you're not going to be able to go anywhere because it's a national holiday. It's election day. They took us to the hotel but everything was pretty much closed down. And I thought it was an excellent idea. And I can't see how an employer would be able to influence the state says, listen, you've got to take the day off. I don't see how an employer can influence anyone's vote that way. The state said, hey, you got it off. It's not the employer deciding you got it off. It's the state. So I don't see how an employer can influence a vote on that. I think that's another good idea because it'll bring out more voters. Okay, I said my piece, sorry.
Hey, no apologies necessary. We appreciate you attending and for sharing. How about Mark Rabo? Thanks again, Mr. Rabo, for passing on some important legislative pieces. Personally, really appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Legislative Committee, other council members, ladies and gentlemen of the public. Representative Grove, thank you very much for attending. And I'd like to offer you praise from my end. First of all, I have relatives who live in York County, and I frequent that county all the time, as well as in New Jersey, where one of the problems in this election, and the committee members, especially committee members Griffith and Urban, know about the drop boxes, because especially when it comes to Hazleton City, there was a drop box there and at the post office here where I live. And I addressed many concerns about the security of the drop box in Hazleton City when it pertained to how the ballots from the drop box would be transported up to the County Bureau of Elections office. I said it many times, and I was told by the Board of Elections, I was told by the solicitors that the sheriff's deputies would be transporting those ballots. But I was talking also not only about the transport, but also behind the desk where the postal workers are, because you have no idea if somebody could have stuffed ballots in those mailboxes behind where the tellers were after hours. I mean, that's what happened in New Jersey, in Paterson, New Jersey, where two municipal council races were deemed fraudulent because of dumping of ballots in mailboxes, and nobody knew actually where these ballots came from. And then all of a sudden, thank God for a woman who was a witness, who testified, and actually the state attorney general of New York, or New Jersey, excuse me, prosecuted that case. And those 4 people are now I think they're awaiting sentencing if they haven't already been sentenced in Paterson, New Jersey. So that's my concern, Representative Grove. And also with regards to people during the pandemic that were fearful after the governor of New York and then President Trump had a dispute about the ventilator issue, and a lot of people fled New York State to come to Pennsylvania, and especially in southern Luzerne County, that went to stay with their relatives during the COVID outbreak. And I had a concern because at the primary last year, people were from New York and New Jersey also were staying with their relatives. Nobody knew if the mail-in ballots were sent to them because of relatives who were living in Hazleton City that were voting. They could have participated in the primary election or in the general election. So nobody really could have determined if those ballots were legitimate. My concern, Representative Grove, is I think that there needs to be, when it comes to like Councilman Urban said about out of state and out of area people, there needs to be some sort of a filtration of people who are Luzerne County residents and people who live out of area and out of state. I like Sheila Miss Seidman and Councilwoman Hauk share wholeheartedly that we want all of our county residents to vote, all of them, okay? But what I don't want is tainting from out of area and out of state residents in our election system. That's, I think, we all universally should share and strive for. And I think, Representative Grove, I hope in your next hearing you share this with your colleagues in the committee, that other states, especially with this when it comes to other states, that they should it's called jurisdictional respect and consideration. I think our state, and Chairman Hawes, you know this full well, that New York and New Jersey don't really share our respect for jurisdictional boundaries. And I think what needs to happen is our state legislatures need to basically grow a spine and get some courage back in them and tell our fellow neighbors in New York and New Jersey that we don't appreciate what they've been doing, in terms of what's been going on for our elections and other issues like Chairman Hawes, the rain tax, and Councilman Griffith, this too. So I think that needs to happen on the state level. And also with regards to complaints, Representative Grove, this is my last issue. As far as the complaints issue goes, there needs to be universal throughout all the counties of the state, a complaint system that allows for due process for all Commonwealth residents, because we don't know where the complaints are going. We don't know if the county is taking it or if the Department of State's taking it. I mean, I think it should go like the Campaign Finance Reform or Campaign Finance Reporting Act, that it should go to the Attorney General. If not the if the Board of Elections feels it's a problem, or if the DA feels it's a problem, it should go to the Attorney General for him to adjudicate it. That would be a fair process. Just allow for some process uniformly, like Councilwoman Hauk said, that should go uniformly throughout all the 67 counties in the Commonwealth. Thank you very much, Representative Grove. I appreciate it. Thank you, Chairman Hawes.
Thank you, Mr. Rabo. I saw Mr. Knapp, I believe, had a question. I don't think I see him on at this point. Does anybody else have any comments for the public? Obviously, check out your chat, and I'm reading all your chats here, everybody. Thank you. I haven't typed any answers, but I see you and I acknowledge that. Does anybody else have any public comments?
Yes, Chairman Hawes, this is Secretary of the Luzerne County Board of Elections, Joyce Dombrowski-Gebhardt.
Go ahead, Mr.
Thank you. I'd like to direct two issues that I have to Representative Grove, welcome on the meeting. And also I'd like to direct this to Mr. Griffith and Mr. Urban and the public. First of all, my opinion is that more help is needed in the Bureau of Elections office to see to it that our elections are successful and transparent. There should be funding for additional staff, and Luzerne County needs to find a way to ensure that, Representative Grove. I hope that you heed my plea for the funding to help us here in the county. As far as mail-in ballots go, I was there for the adjudication, the pre-canvassing, etc. And these no excuse mail-in ballots were the cause of mass confusion. Even though, you know, there's been maybe 53,000 people that used the mail-in ballots, that right there was really not, it really wasn't the way to go. I feel my issue is that I believe, and I've actually done some research, that we needed another way besides filing a right to know request to check for falsified mail-in ballots used using addresses of property owners. And this did occur. It should even be prosecuted. These mail-in ballots need to be repealed, and I hope that Senator Stefano and Doug Mastriano are successful when they do introduce the legislation, because this was just a temporary fix for, you know, the COVID pandemic, and it really did. The mail-in ballots aren't really the way to have an election of integrity. It's not a good thing to do for our county, especially here. And so thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Ms. Dombrowski-Gephardt. I really appreciate you. Now I have Marion Murphy.
Chairman Haas?
Yes. Oh, Mr. Knapp, but I thought you had left. Okay. Go ahead,
Yeah,
sir.
no, I was having a problem with unmuting myself.
Yep.
Thank
Go
you,
ahead.
Chairman
You're
Haas.
next in the queue.
Thank you, Chairman Haas and the committee members. I did publish some text on the side. If the rest of the audience can't see it, I'll read it aloud. I would just stress the importance of no stone unturned in our process of voting. I am so impressed with the deep investigation involved with this committee for voters of Luzerne County. If nothing is changed going forward in the voting process, no one can say Councilman Haas, Councilman Walters, and Councilman Urban haven't performed for the voters in Luzerne County. You are all to be applauded for your extensive research into this last November's election. You are not accepting, and I thank God, the narrative of council culture. You have backbone, and they suggest in the conspiracy theory they can let that go. The people who have requested a complete investigation, that would be your constituents, and there were a lot of them, you wouldn't have been able to rest at night if you didn't follow through for them. You certainly have not failed them. Wonderful to be in the company with individuals who don't back into the demands of ones who didn't care about the balls that were dropped during last November's election. No one can say you three have dropped the ball for the Luzerne County voters and our democracy. Integrity is key here and for future elections. I say keep up the good work. I'm happy again to be in company with you who are striving for we can't be perfect, but we can be studious at coming to some accuracy in our voting process without question. And again, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Neff. Marianne Murphy, are you still there? Ms. Murphy.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, yes, ma'am. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much.
Welcome.
Thank you for the opportunity to give, for me to give my opinion on the topic of the mail-in no excuse ballots. I am in favor of them, and I want to just give you a few reasons why. We are living in the 21st century. Our society has changed dramatically in the last several decades. I want to address particular changes that have occurred. Working mothers. I was a working mother for 35 years, and I would have loved the opportunity to have mail-in ballot when I was in that position, because it would have enabled me to be more focused on my ability to go to vote and try to take care of my children at the same time after I got home from my position. So I think for all the working mothers today, it's a great service to them. Single parents, including dads and moms who have this big responsibility of their family along with their working responsibilities, they appreciate the mail-in ballot opportunity for no excuse. I want to also speak to the age group where I am now, 65 plus. Even though myself and a lot of my friends don't have specific medical problems, any given day we wake up, we may not have the physical ability to go and vote. So giving us the opportunity to cast that ballot early so that we know that we have spoken in our democracy is a great service to that group of voters, let alone the fact that there are so many of us who are snowbirds and have children that we like to visit for specific times. If my grandson is in a big game and it happens to fall on election day, I would love to be able to vote early, vote mail-in, so that I could go to Connecticut or wherever to attend that event. So there are so many reasons today where mail-in voting is so important. And I want to commend you for your efforts to try to clarify and to enforce the legality of mail-in voting. That is a very important issue, and I thank you for doing that. I also want to give you the point of view from a poll worker. I've been a poll worker for the last 6 years, and I'm under the impression that, well, first of all, I know to vote in Luzerne County, you have to be registered. To register, you have to present identification, a license or some other appropriate form of identification, and verify your address. And then when you do vote, if a second ballot comes up with your name on it, it will be discarded because we have all the checks in place now for us to pick up these duplicate ballots if they would ever occur. be it a provisional or 2 mail-in ballots or a mail-in and a poll location ballot. So I know there's a lot of noise about fraud and everything, but I really think we have things in place to prevent all that. So again, thank you for the opportunity, and I would hope you would consider the points that I've made here as you think about these issues.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy, and thank you for being a poll worker. We need more people like you. So thanks for your service there.
It's my pleasure to be a poll worker. I feel it's my civic duty.
We really appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
How about, I'm looking down here, it looks like Alyssa Fusaro. Ms. Fusaro, are you there with us?
Yes, I am.
Good, please go ahead.
All right, thank you very much, Luzerne County Council members, committee members, Representative Grove. I really feel that no excuse mail-in balloting should be trashed completely. It opens us up for statewide fraud. Believe it or not, this is what absentee ballots are for. You can vote early. You can vote, if we put a separate box on that, a separate check mark that we can, effectively that you don't have, that you're afraid of COVID, or that you don't want to go out even, or you're going to be out of state, or whatever your excuse is, you can write it in there and put it in on a special line, whatever you need to do. But I think that would be, that works for stay-at-home mothers, single mothers that are working. It also works for snowbirds. We need to ensure right now that people of Pennsylvania should be required to provide some form of identification. I heard the lady before me say that you have to show identification to register to vote. No, you don't. Not anymore. You don't. And that's an issue. That is a problem that you don't. Okay, the fact that I could have probably written in for as many mail-in ballots as I wanted and got them. I had 4 to 6 come to my address alone, and I could have filled out each application for whoever I wanted to and sent them in. Obviously, I didn't, and I wouldn't. But there's just me here. So how did that happen? We need to make sure that these votes are legitimate. Did my vote count, or did somebody in New York have cancel out my vote? Somebody from Jersey that was visiting their family and decided to vote for the Pennsylvania state election. Election integrity right now, as a private citizen, as a Pennsylvanian, as a Luzerne County resident, I can tell you right now that I have no faith that my vote counted this election. That is a problem. And I am only one of thousands and thousands of Pennsylvanians with a complete lack of faith in this voting system right now. And many people have said that unless things change drastically, why vote at all? Sheila, you said that many more people were registered to vote than have ever voted before because they were able to vote by mail. How would you feel when not many people vote at all because they don't feel that their vote is counted? This is a major issue, and I know I'm just one private citizen here in Pennsylvania, in Luzerne County, Pennsylvania. But I'll tell you what, I do want to let you know one thing. I do appreciate that you guys are doing the work, you're doing your homework, you're buckling down, you're looking for the irregularities and the dead people voting and the other issues, because that is an issue for me. It is an issue for all of us. We're all looking, and I can't tell you how many people have told me. One of the girls down at 279 told me that her vote didn't count because she walked in and they had told her she already voted. How can they tell her that she already voted when she didn't? She never cast a vote, but they told her she voted by mail. So she walked out knowing that her vote didn't count because she never voted by mail. She never requested a mail-in vote, a mail-in ballot, but yet her vote, quote unquote, count. Her vote was considered to have gone in by mail-in. Well, she never requested a mail-in ballot, but yet she walked in and they told her she had already voted or that she had received a mail-in ballot. That's a problem. That is a major problem. And another friend say, well, I told them that I didn't get a mail-in ballot and they better let me vote. So the guy at the poll said, oh, well, don't worry about it. We'll fix it. And he supposedly let her vote on one of the machines, but she wasn't supposed to vote. Because so these are all major issues that I've heard over and over and over again, not just from Luzerne County, from other counties all across the state. All of my friends across the state have had the same type of issues. Not all of them, I'm sorry. Some of us were able to vote in this past election. But that's pretty much my aggravation, along with many other Pennsylvanians. And then when we watch, and we see a lot of the votes coming from, all the other different areas and states and being driven in, and it just whatever. None of us have faith in the system anymore. And I applaud you for working tirelessly to help us have faith in that system again, because unless things change drastically, there are quite a few of us that don't have faith in that system anymore. Thank you very much for letting me speak.
Thanks, Ms. Fasaro. That's why we're here. We desperately want to have 100% faith in the system. Anybody else would like to speak?
Harry, could you hear me?
Yes, sir. Who's speaking?
Mr. Manta.
Mr. Manta, go ahead.
Okay. I'd like to address this to several different people in the audience. And the one woman in particular that said that, there's 3 Republicans on this legislative committee. I think that's a very cruel statement. They're not only Republicans, they're citizens. I was in the military for 35 years. I stood in line for everything in the military. And if people are that lazy that they don't think their voice will be counted unless they stand in line, that's really a bad attitude towards the human factor in this whole thing, where people should be proud that they can get out and vote, and they're not in a communist country where they can't vote. That's one issue. In a bubonic plague, people got out and voted. They just have to be safe in what they're doing. This election is election day. It's not election month. It's not election week. It's not election whatever. It's election day. This day is given to you by the rights and the fight of American people that have pride in the system. And the petri dish of fraud that was brought up in this election, it culminates from all of these issues that we're discussing in this whole thing. It's whole inquiry, put it that way. So it shows that in the inquiry that people are lazy. And Miss Williams, I don't know where she's from, but I'm not pointing the finger at her, but you know what? If people would just see that men and women die for the right to vote in a upstanding election. And they have to think about that, Harry, because of the fact that in history, it showed. In religious history, it showed. Religious history, people died. People were killed because they went to church. People were killed because they went to vote. My gosh, they should just thank God that they could get out and vote for someone and go out and do their job. It's not a hard thing to do, to spend a few minutes of your precious time. If you think that it's more important to go to that baseball game, or it's more important for you to do something else, then don't vote. It's simple as that. If you have the heart and you have the gumption and you have the stamina to vote for someone and to stand up for your own rights, they're the kind of people we want to vote. But the people that are willy-nilly, just like some of the Catholic people, they're willy-nilly about church. These people are willy-nilly about voting. Oh, well, my son has a baseball game, so I can't go to church. My son has a football game. My daughter has a dance recital. They're willy-nilly excuses. They're not people that have heart in what they're doing to keep this government running in the right direction. Republican, Democrat, whatever. It's your right to stand up and get in that line and vote. Don't use COVID as an excuse, because COVID wasn't here last year. COVID wasn't here the year before. And realize that people are going to cost this county more money than we could shake a stick at next year for this election. And I could see that people are not impressed with what I'm saying, but the mail-in voting has to stop. Stand up for yourself. Don't lay down and say, oh, a convenient vote. It's not a convenient vote when you have to get on the battlefield and fight for the right for people. Harry, my blood pressure is going up and I have to get off, because I really can't see these people that have any ethical values or political values to say that mail-in ballots are good. They are the worst thing that anybody ever could have came up with. Stand in line. Be a hero. Don't be a zero. Thank you very much. I'll pass my time on to someone else.
Thank you, Mr. Manton. Thank you for your military service. We appreciate you. I don't see anybody else that has not spoken, so I think we are ready to conclude. Does anybody else who hasn't spoken have anything to say? Anything to add? As we conclude here, committee members and members of the general public. So we're looking at, once the Senate hearing comes together, we look at doing the same thing. And we'll probably have a very similar meeting, but we'll let you know, and we'll certainly advertise that in advance. In the future, like I said earlier, again, in case you missed it, we're very much look forward to having members of the Department of State. Maybe they can brief us with this new system that's coming to pass. And I would especially like to know how we're going to fund it. But I would like to see that, and then also our local delegation. So with that being said, do I have a motion to adjourn our meeting tonight?
I'll make that motion, Walter Griffith.
By Councilman Griffiths, do we have a second?
Second, Urban.
By Councilman, are all in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you, everybody, for attending. I really appreciate you.
Thank you. Good night.